Cool.
So it says live on my end, so we're going?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, so my name is Josh Spodek. You are?
I am Todd Wahnish.
And so I write a column for Inc.com. And one of the things that I notice a lot of articles are about entrepreneurship. That's one of the main readers, one of the main groups that reads the magazine and the webpage. And a lot of the stuff is like tips of how to be a better entrepreneur, or there's a lot of stuff that's like, Bill Gates did this one thing, you should too, or Zuckerberg did this one thing, or Elon Musk did this one thing, you should do it too. And generally they're not bad tips, but they're built on a foundation of a perspective on entrepreneurship that I think is consistent with the mainstream view. And that mainstream view may work for a lot of people, but I feel like there's other ways of looking at it that I think are more effective. And when I talked to Todd about it, he being an entrepreneur, me being an entrepreneur, and also me being an educator of entrepreneurship and you being an educator of entrepreneurship, we get into these conversations that are different than a lot of the conversations about like what you see talked about on like, I don't know, Y Combinator, stuff like that. And so we decided let's record one of these conversations, because these conversations we find are really awesome. And we think that this is a voice that is not out there, could be out there more. Why don't you take it from here? What brings you here?
Yeah, so my original background, interestingly enough, wasn't startups or technology. I'm not formally trained as a technologist. I didn't get a computer science degree. My original background is in fine art. So growing up, I was a huge comics nerd, went to college for fine art. When I graduated college, I was a classically trained painter. I could go into a wood shop and cut stretchers and stretch a canvas and paint it. But I had absolutely no technical skill, and I had absolutely no business sensibility. And over the years, in fact, one of the main turning points of my life that actually turned me towards business mindset and towards an entrepreneurial mindset is that when I first came to New York City, I was homeless. So I had no place to live. I was able to take showers once every 3 weeks at a place that used to be called the Carmine Recreational Center in Lower East Side of Manhattan. And it was finding myself in that position, knowing that I was a halfway intelligent human being. I couldn't for the life of me understand why I wasn't able to support myself.
They're coming for you.
I know, you got the cops in the background. That's great. Typical New York City. So yeah, I didn't understand why I couldn't support myself as a creator, as an artist, because I had done the right things, gone to the right schools, and did exactly what they told me. And it was at that point that I realized that, especially as a creative and independent individual, at least in art school, and later on I found in most other colleges, you're trained into a very specific skill set. And in regards to artists, you're trained to make the work, not sell the work. It's your job to create the vision, to create the product, which isn't even considered a product. You just keyed in to create the artwork. And if you're good enough or lucky enough or fortunate enough, then somebody's going to come in, a business manager or a gallerist or dealer. They're going to come in and they're going to help you manage your work, and they're going to get you the business, and they're going to manage your career, and everything is going to be wonderful. And it does happen for some people, but but the system is built in a certain way for certain types of people who go through a certain type of process. And for a large swath of creative people, they end up graduating, or they end up focusing on their art, doing what they're told or what they believe to be right, and 5-10 years later, they're onto something else. They can't actually make a living at it, and they become weekenders or holiday artists, or working on their passion at night. So I was pretty determined to not be that. I'm pretty stubborn and pretty bullheaded when it comes to launching products and getting my work out there. So it was at that point that I realized that there had to be something else. There had to be a better way. I was clearly missing something, because I knew that there were other people out there who were doing things. And it took several years. I went into animation and directed a bunch of projects for Cartoon Network and music videos and things like that. That was the first thing that allowed me to actually apply my craft to a business model, right? It was freelance animation, 2D hand-drawn cell animation, to a business of freelancing, consulting, doing commercial work, and actually being able to get my work on a screen, which for me was a gallery. So to be able to turn on the TV and go to Cartoon Network and see my cartoons and see my commercials, that was my vision of what a new gallery could be. And as time went on.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask you something about your description of getting art training and then going out and being like, if I'm good enough, maybe someone will buy my stuff.
Yeah.
Jumping a few middle steps. Now, I know that you do a lot of stuff in the programming world.
Yep.
I didn't anticipate this, but it felt like that description of the art training had more in common with, I mean, obviously making art is different than making programs, but I feel like a lot of people coming out with programming,
no, it's
like,
identical.
Good enough, I hope I get a job.
Yeah, it's identical. It's one of the things that brought me into technology and front-end development, back-end development, and now we help launch businesses and startups. Like, one of the things that drew me to it is that it really occurred to me a few years ago that there really wasn't a difference between putting a paintbrush on canvas and putting a code into a text editor. Like, you're still creating a creative product. The only difference is that the creative product of technology, you're starting with a specific purpose in mind, whether it's to get a customer or whether it's for this person to insert a specific data point within a form to get a result. The idea that you're still starting with a creative idea in your mind, and you still have to go through the exact same creative process to figure out, okay, here are the steps that I'm going to make or that I'm going to use to create this product. If I was creating a sculpture, I'm going to sit there and start off with a drawing, and then I'm going to figure out technically the exact tools that I need to make that sculpture. And then I'm going to find the people, if I need help, I'm going to find the people to make that sculpture, to go to a foundry, to pour the molten, metal or steel or aluminum to create those molds. And then I'm going to figure out the specific types of paints that I'm going to need to actually create the overall vision of what I'm going to have as a product. And then I'm going to sell that or present that to a customer who has been interested, hopefully from the very beginning. And if you look at startups and you look at technology, it's the exact same process. Excuse me. We have more technical terms like wireframes, UI, UX, researching, high fidelity mockups, all these kinds of things, but the process is the exact same. And you're still presenting it along the way.
So that's your process as a creator, as either a creative artist or a creative programmer. What about the human side of when you said that when you come out of art school, you were ill prepared to become an artist? Like you could put paint on a canvas, but you couldn't support yourself.
Yep.
Is it different? Was that the same? Did most people come out of school having learned how to program? I mean, it feels like there's more people hired, but I feel like there's not. I would guess that they all are trained to like go out and take orders from other people and do what you're told, but that's kind of like, I don't know how much better that is. Yeah, you get paid, but I don't know how much more fulfilling that is than. Anyway, what's your observation of is it the same when you leave school? Are they better prepared to live a creative lifestyle, or are they?
From technology, you mean comparing like someone who graduates with a technology degree versus an art degree?
Yeah, I mean, you said there are problems with people who come out with art degrees. Other people come out with technology degrees.
Yeah, I mean, they're the same people. So people are all different, but we tend to fall into similar life patterns, right? So the pattern for the artist is to come out and they're, if I was going to put them into two huge buckets, right, and overgeneralize, I would say that there are certain types of artists who just want to draw or they just want to paint. They don't care what it is. They just want to get paid to create. So people who feel like that tend to go into illustration or comic work. They become assistants to art to more business style artists, right? The studio assistants. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a personality trait. I knew some of my closest friends back home love drawing and painting every day, and they get paid a regular paycheck. It's a job. They have a career doing what they're doing for somebody else, either full-time or as a freelancer, and then they treat it like a full-time job. On the other side, you have more of the business artist side. The business artist side is in pop culture, it's your Andy Warhols. In modern day, it's your Jeff Koons type of high art artists who may not do the actual labor themselves, but treats it as a business. Their job is as a traditional CEO role, right? Their job is they don't have time to paint all day. They're busy selling the work. And you can contrast that and compare that to people who have a technology background or who are looking to learn how to code or who are looking to build a startup. It's the same parallel. So you have developers and designers who learn how to code. They go through a boot camp or they go to school and all they want is a job. They just want to code. They just want to get paid to code. They have some of their own ideas, but maybe they're not emotionally ready to take that leap to start their own business, to launch their own business, and to kind of risk, it's that risk aversity, right? They're developers. They're not necessarily entrepreneurs yet. And some may never be. On the other side, for the developers, you have people who come out and they're like, I'm going to launch a startup. I'm launching a business. And a lot of people might not even have the technology background. You have a lot of people who come out of money management and who come out of business school who are already removed from the technology. They say, well, I can't be a technologist, so then I don't have to worry about getting a technology job. I want to start a business. So they sit back and say, okay, here's my sculpture. Who do I need? What are the tools that I need to build this? And then their job becomes on the same level as the business artist, which is I have to go get the clients. I have to go get the customers. I have to go get the business model, make sure there's a product market fit for what I want to create. And then they have their assistants, essentially, their art assistants, which are the developers and the coders and the designers, actually build out the product and maintain that product.
So I never noticed that. I thought that when people graduated art school, I always felt like they all wanted to be artists, fine artists. And they, like actors make money, they make a living by doing commercials.
Sure.
And artists, I figured, make money by doing illustration and logos and things like that, but that wasn't what they really wanted to do. But I figured programmers who get a job doing programming, I thought that's probably what they wanted to do. But now I realize a lot of programming jobs, probably there's a lot of people who go into programming to, I just assumed everyone went into programming because, wait, can you hear over the thing?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so I thought that programmers, all of them went into programming because they wanted to be in a startup, they wanted to be entrepreneurial.
Right.
But I guess there are some artists who just want to do illustration and that's it. And there are some programmers who just want to sit down at their computer and be told, make this, make that, and not really be that creative.
Sure. Well, I would say that everybody, at least that I knew and know personally, everybody who graduates from an art school or goes into art in general wants to be an artist, right? But their definition of what that is wildly different. So some people are amazing logo designers, and for them, that is art. Some people are jewelers and make incredible jewelry or fashion. That is an art. So the level, the umbrella of art, I think, stands and is there, but the subcategories are completely unique to each person. So there are tons of people who look at the Zuckerbergs and who look at these massive startups and want to be the next Uber or want to be the next Google or what have you. But then you also have a lot of people who are coming in to the technology field because they see it as a job opportunity, right? They see it as a way, hey, I work in accounting. If I learn how to code, maybe I can actually increase my revenue either at the company that I work for, because now I can contribute more to that specific corporate environment, or maybe I can get a job freelancing, or maybe I can get a job at a startup. Maybe I just want some side income, right? So a lot of the people that we actually teach in technology and in Ruby on Rails and frameworks like that, beyond just teaching in startups, my wife Melissa also teaches junior Rails developers. A lot of her students are not doing it so that they can launch their own startup, and a lot of them aren't even doing it because they want to join working at a startup. They're doing it because they see it as a way to increase their value, whether just taking on side work, whether just making themselves feel more comfortable and keeping themselves relevant. I think you and I have talked about this before. I think we're in a generation, we're in an era now where you you must keep yourself relevant by continuing to educate yourself across a variety of different types of subjects. You know, you can't just go deep dive on one thing. You're going to be irrelevant really quick.
All right. So, and I guess there are also programmers who just want to get a good job with good benefits, and hopefully they can stay below the radar of any problems happening for 40 years before they retire. Although those are not people in my life. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sure I know people like that, but I was at a friend's startup for a while years ago before business school, and his company was acquired by a big, Fortune 100 company. And so for 6 months, I worked for this big Fortune 100 company, and they were gradually shifting the offices where we were into their big headquarters in Midtown. And I once went to the headquarters, and I went into this. Did I ever tell you about this? I go into this room, and it's like rows and rows of desks, and everyone's sitting, and they're all like hunched over. I don't know if I can show it, like hunched over, just like looking at their computer. No life. It was like, you know what it looked like to me? It was, in Aliens, when they go into the room with the pods, it just looked like a bunch of pods. In Aliens, that they're gonna the things are gonna scream out and get you, but just lifeless things, all orderly stacked together.
Yeah, but that's normal. That's normal by today's standards. You're describing like 90% of people that actually have a job and go to work.
Yeah, not 90%. Not 90% of the people watching this video.
No, hopefully not. But that is what is quickly becoming remnants of an old model of employment, right?
Yeah, and I looked at them and I thought, look, I don't know what's going on inside their heads. I hope that maybe they're new immigrants, or maybe they're the first ones in their families to get corporate jobs, and they're living for their children. Like, I hope they're all living, putting their kids through college, because then that would explain. I could imagine someone sacrificing their current life in order that their kids have a better life. I can see that. I was like, please let that be the case. Oh, okay. So now let's talk about you're talking about how staying relevant and how people learn new skills in order to give themselves alternative ways of making money, things like that. Now, I personally think that, and I expect that a lot of people watching this are going to be thinking, I want to be able to create opportunities that weren't there before, and to have a measure of control over my life, and not just be doing what people tell me to do. And so, all right, let's talk entrepreneurship, because that to me is entrepreneurial thinking. And a lot of people know entrepreneurial thinking, but they don't know how to behave entrepreneurially. And to me also, I should say that to be entrepreneurial doesn't mean you have to start your own company. I've had plenty of clients who come to me and they say, I want to leave. You've started a company, help me start a company. And they've just been spending all this time being told what to do. They don't realize they can lead their managers. They can propose a project without leaving that can become their project in their company, and they can head a division, or they can have a project that they have ownership of, which I think is like great, because maybe someone doesn't want to spend a year without pay and try to have to figure out how to get health insurance and benefits and things like that.
Sure.
So what's the current way that people look at entrepreneurship? Because it's not how we look at it.
Right.
How do you see the mainstream view of entrepreneurship?
Well, the mainstream view of entrepreneurship is, the image that is projected by media and most mainstream pundits would be that it's the modern day rock star, right? It's something magical, something special. You're the kid in your college dorm, or in your basement, or in your garage, and you got your hoodie on, and you just come up with this. You just see a problem, and bam, it's this magic idea. And you and a couple friends just bust your ass, and you make this thing, and then it just takes off. It's just rockets, even though we know that logically that's an outlier, it still exists, and that's just not the case. The reality is that it's much harder, and I think the number one problem that I see that people make in entrepreneurship is that I'll phrase it like this. If there was one thing that anyone could take away from this little webinar presentation thing, is I wish that anyone who's looking to start their own business would take a sheet of paper, just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then a giant Sharpie marker write on it, it's not about you. That's it. It's not about you. and just tape it over your desk, over your computer. You just need to look at that every single day, because that is the number one problem, and that is why most startups fail. Because the tendency of people is to start with the solution. People see a problem and they say, oh my God, there's a problem. You know, I have a background in that. That's something that I know a little bit about. I have a solution. And they start focusing on the solution.
I'm gonna do it even a little bit more. Yeah. I don't think they even start with a problem. Because if you look at like the social network, it's like he stumbled on this thing. Like he didn't say like, what problem could Facebook solve? Or what problem could I solve? He was just doing stuff and it hit.
Yeah.
They don't even, I think the mainstream view doesn't even include looking at the problem. I think it's just like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is really cool. Oh, my friends are all using it.
Right.
Now they find, oh, there's a problem out there, but they might not even think that way. It's just like create cool things. And if your thing is cool enough, people buy it.
It's a build it and they will come mentality. And that doesn't work. It only works if you have a lot of money to burn.
Or if you get really lucky.
Or lucky, but even with luck, you're still dealing with a lot of marketing dollars that you're going to take to get out there. I mean, I
think the mainstream view says that you don't even need the marketing. I think the mainstream view is like, you'll tell a friend, they'll tell a friend, and suddenly the whole world goes for it.
Certainly, and that definitely happens, and even half of those companies burn out. But that's not how to build a sustainable business for anyone that's looking to bootstrap or do it by themselves. And that's one of the, we were talking about this before, the predominant view of startups. It's become mainstream methodology to focus on the lean startup methodology, which is Eric Ries. It's actually a fantastic methodology. It makes a lot of sense. It can put you through a build cycle, build, measure, learn, and you go through the cycle, you build the smallest thing that you possibly can, you push it out into the world, you get the result, you measure that data, you learn from that data, and you bake that back into the product. So you have this growing cycle that's always refining. The problem is and it's not even to the fault of Eric Ries or the actual methodology, but people get so latched on to the build thing, and they end up building the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. And that's because the problem is that we tend to start with this idea that we have an idea, that light bulb moment, and that is literally what kills you. It is not about the idea. The idea comes dead last. If you start up and you have an idea for something, you're, good luck, because it's gonna be a real painful process for you. And an example of that would be, look, the lean startup methodology works great, but it tends to work great in two circumstances. One is if you're going to be venture backed or already are venture backed. If you have raised a seed round or raised a family round, if you've raised anywhere, I don't know, I would guess between 20 and 100,000 maybe, you can get a launch, and you can go a couple times through that build, measure, learn. You're going to put a bunch of money into the build process, into the learning process, into the measuring process. So in that case, lean startup works. If you have money to burn, if you have investors who have pushed money into your bank account, they are paying you to experiment. They are paying you to try things to get that market traction. So that is one case where something like the lean startup works. The other way that the lean startup works is if you're a large corporation, if you're a large enterprise, and you're trying to stave off startup competition. So what you do is,
yeah, I have a firehouse across the street, so I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but it happens all the time.
So the other instances where it works is if you're in a large enterprise or a large corporation, and you have a lot of incumbents coming in, these tons of small startups that are kind of chipping away at your market share, you can internally create a lean startup to build, measure, and learn multiple small products and build out teams of 3 or 4 and just let them go and experiment and use that lean startup methodology process to test new markets, right? But for most people, we run into problems. If you're starting as a bootstrapper, you just want to try something on your own, then what you do is you do not start with the idea, you start with the audience. You got to start with the audience.
I want to give a few comments on the predominant methodology before we go on to the next step. Mm-hmm. So first of all, you said if someone has the mainstream view, it's much harder. And I had to comment, it may be harder in terms of you're going to take more time require more resources and maybe burn more calories. On the other hand, it's much, much more rewarding, and it's much more fun. So like hard and fun to me are not, exclusive. So to me, yeah, it'd be kind of neat if I could snap my fingers and suddenly everyone in the world was like clamoring to use my product. That would be kind of neat. Although it wouldn't feel like much of an achievement. And people aren't going, I don't feel like the reason I'm going into entrepreneurship is not just to like IPO and get rich. It's also to solve people's problems and have people come back and be like, I'm really glad that you made this thing. Like, I didn't realize that it was so easy. I didn't realize I could do so, I'm creating courses. So I didn't realize I could learn so much. Or that I could be able to do these things that you're teaching me. I like that.
Sure,
and I like overcoming these challenges. I mean, if you could just keep snapping your fingers and solve all the problems in the world, then, so for me, as an educator, my job, my role is to not just help people create a company, but to help them become someone who can create companies or who can solve problems for others. And in that context, simply seeing one thing through is not as valuable as, for me, I want to change the person. I want to have this person become someone who is more able than they were before. And so if you read it, like chapter 1 of Lean Startup, it says like, this is a book of management. Big companies have had management tools, management techniques for a long time, but small companies haven't. And so we want to make techniques that work for small and young companies. And I think also I agree in like, to me, Silicon Valley is in a context where Lean Startup can be very effective because there's a lot of people coming up with a lot of ideas and some of them are going to hit. And even if they didn't have any idea that they would hit, if you put enough programmers together or let enough programmers do stuff on the side, a lot of them are going to be like, if you have thousands and thousands of ideas coming out, dozens and dozens are going to be really good ideas.
Certainly. I guess I don't disagree. I don't think that the Lean Startup by itself is a bad thing. I mean, it does work. The problem is that we've come into a time where people are using that as a starting point rather than an end point. So what happens is people come up with the idea. They say, okay, here's the idea over here. I've got this idea. Boom, Lean Startup. And so you go from idea into build mode. And that is
which can work a lot. A lot of times it can work.
It can work, but your risk of failure is dramatically higher because you've missed an entirely other process, which is actually doing deep research on an audience that has a problem, that has tried to solve that problem in their own unique way and hasn't been able to, and who has actively pulled out their wallet, pulled out their credit card, and tried to solve it in another way. That is an audience that has a problem. If you find an audience that has a problem that has actively tried to solve it in their own unique way and is still failing, or has even better taken it upon themselves to create a patchwork solution, that is a market that you want to go into because those are people actively trying to solve their own problem. When you find a market like that, and when you dive into that market, and when you start learning how they talk specifically about their own problem, then you are on a path to being able to create a very small, buildable thing, very easy to do, that can test your assumptions against that problem. Once you do that, then you can start building an audience around the problem. You become a brand, you become an authority that people come to about that problem. It doesn't take long to do. You don't have to be Seth Godin about it. You just start talking through the problem and helping people and providing value. Once you build up a small audience around providing value on that specific problem, you can then test launch a product idea and pre-sell them on the idea. And if you pre-sell people on the idea, then you have customers who are actually paying you for the development of your own product. And that is the correct way to do it. If you want to keep equity, right? Again, this is about giving the entrepreneur leverage. If you build your own thing and find your own audience and have your audience fund a product to sell to that audience, even if you decide to go get a seed round or a Series A or what have you, you're going to have so much more leverage because it becomes optional. It becomes bonus. It becomes an investment rather than a high risk thing, right? You get to keep more equity in your business. You get to control the destiny of your business much, much more. And in fact, most of the people that end up doing this end up staying bootstrappers because once you get your monthly recurring revenue up to a certain point, you can actually self-sustain. Or then you can take an equity stake and give somebody an equity stake, and instead of giving them 50% of your company, you're giving them like 5%. It's a night and day thing. It's just that most people want to build a thing. They don't want to worry about finding the market until after they've built something. So they build something and then go find money to try to market it and find a market somewhere. And that is a problem.
Yeah, I love that we began by you talking about art, and someone who went to art school, the amount of passion that you're showing for this is so much greater. And it's what I was talking about. Okay, you just packed a lot into like a minute or two of talking, and people at home are like, whoa, like I hope they're like taking notes, like what happened. So we're going to unpack that, and we might not be able to unpack it all in one conversation, because you and I talk about this a lot.
Sure.
But that's the reward I was talking about. Like that's what, when you are dealing with people's problems and helping them solve them, then it's that I talk about, there's two kinds of inspiration that people can have. One of them is like, it's December 30th and you're like, oh, I got to go to the gym next week, or every week next year. And that passion lasts up until like Valentine's Day, and then the gyms are all empty. There's another type of passion, which is helping other people solve their problems, which is what you were talking about. And that sustains you for a long time.
Absolutely.
And we love stuff like that. That's like, that can keep you going for years. This feeling of like, I can't believe that my solution is not out there yet. I got to get it done fast, and I got to work on it. And like that passion will sustain you for years.
Right.
So, and to me, what I heard and what I teach is like what you're talking about is people working with people first, and then solving their problems later.
Yes.
It's an empathetic, it's a compassionate approach. That's the way I think about it.
It's empathetic, it's compassionate, and it's the way business is being done in the future. If you think about it like this, if I launch a product tomorrow, if I find a problem and I create a solution, and I haven't done all this, I might have done some research, market research. I see that there's a problem, and I think I have a solution, so I build a product, and I launch that product. There is literally nothing bonding me to anybody. Whereas if I find an audience that has a deep-rooted problem, and I do everything I can to provide value up front to solve a problem, even if it's a small problem, it doesn't have to be a major thing. You just start chipping away to solve problems. You are now bonding yourself to an audience. And the reason that's powerful is that, God forbid, your app doesn't work, your business fails. Maybe you have 2 businesses or 3 business ideas that fail. You still have an audience that is going to support you throughout the time as you grow. If I launch, a perfect example, take anyone that has a following, Seth Godin, I mentioned him a little earlier. That guy can launch whatever he wants. And you know what? It doesn't matter if it's going to fail. First of all, he could literally launch something tomorrow, and even if it was the worst idea in the world, there's a large percentage of his audience that know him, that like him, and that trust him because he's provided so much value over the years that they're going to purchase anything he launches. So when he does, the reason he doesn't do that.
Oprah Winfrey could put out a book of empty pages.
Absolutely.
And like 10 million copies sold.
Absolutely, 100%. And the only reason that people like Seth Godin don't do that is because they protect that relationship. They only want to launch something specific if they can really help. But their market now, their followers, the people that trust what they have to say, is so great because they have helped that audience with a specific problem that audience has had. So Seth Godin can launch something today. He can launch a book this week. He can launch an app next month. He can launch something 2 years from now. And if this book fails or that app fails, it doesn't matter because his audience is still there. It's still growing, and they're still going to be attracted to what he says. It's the same thing with people like Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk has built an entire empire off the same concept.
And so this is how
it's led him to become an investor because people trust him based on the things he's done and the way he's actually been able to hustle himself out there and get his name out there. You say the name hustle and people go right to Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, he's branding hustle. It's amazing. And again, he could launch an app about hustling tomorrow and he would instantly have like what, 100,000 monthly recurring revenue because people trust him. Like, it's a no-brainer. Again, the reason that these people at this level don't do that is because they actually know this and they protect their brand and they don't want to betray the trust of somebody. So if they're going to launch something, they're going to make sure that it's something that their own audience really wants and is really willing to pay for, and that it can really help them.
So in my course, I have people going out and building relationships like this, and everyone looks at it and they say, oh, that's customer discovery. That's what Lean Launch does.
Uh-huh.
how is this, what you're talking about, different than customer discovery?
Because customer discovery is, it assumes a lot. When people traditionally do customer discovery, the problem is that it's disingenuous. And I know I'm going to take a lot of flack for saying that, but if you really think about the process, what we do during customer discovery is we assume that somebody out there knows exactly what the problem is and knows exactly what they want to solve it, and has some idea as to the actual root of their problem. It's a lot to put on people, and it goes back to Henry Ford. If he had asked people what they had wanted, they wouldn't have said a car. They would have said a faster horse, right? Mm-hmm. Even Steve Jobs says the same thing. It's like people don't really know what they want until they see it. Well, how do you know? Well, that's because people don't know what they want. If they knew exactly what they wanted, they would build it, or they would launch it. So you sit people down and you start going through even a Socratic questioning system done in an improper way. You end up getting misleading answers. And the other problem, and I've seen this over and over and over again, and early on I made it myself, is that when you do customer development, you already have the end goal in mind. You already have the idea. That's why you're doing customer development, because you've already come up with the idea, which is wrong. Right? So you say, I've got this idea. I need to see if it's valid. I'm going to try to validate it or invalidate it by doing customer development. So I start interviewing people. First of all, you don't have customers. They're not customer development. No one's bought anything yet. If they were customers, yes, true customer development, if you have customers and you interview customers about why they purchased your thing or why they returned your product, that is customer development. But just going out and talking to random people who may or may not be in your marketplace about things that they don't know how to solve and don't even know how to cure, just because somebody says they want something does not mean they're going to pull out their credit card and pay for it. Whereas you start with the audience and you start with the pain and you start with where people are actually trying to solve it for themselves, and you can prove that they're actually solving it for themselves or trying to, then you have a market. The difference is that when you go online, real customer development is going online and actually seeing how real people talk about things in their own unedited words. When I go to Google and I type something in, I'm instantly looking for an answer to a question. When I go on Amazon and I go down and I scroll down to the Amazon book reviews, when I see those reviews from people anywhere from 2 stars to 4 stars, those are people that like something, but they're also giving their opinion about the actual holes in that. Oh, I really like what the author said about this, but I really think he or she could have talked more about this. Or like, why didn't they really talk about that? That's what I really wanted to learn. That is a real person giving their real opinion, unfiltered, about something. If you go on to things like Quora or you go on sites like Reddit and you actually see people asking questions, that is the tip of the iceberg of a problem. People are literally reaching out. I have this problem. Here is the question that I have in regards to that problem. Please, somebody answer this for me. That in itself is a lead to a potential, what later could be a solution. Because then you get to see the question, and better yet, you actually get to see real people trying to answer it, trying to solve it, trying to say, well, this is what you could try versus that, or I've tried this and it sucks, you should try that. You actually get to see real people in a real, unedited, unprompted way. The minute you put a spotlight on somebody and ask them 20 questions, people aren't used to being interviewed. They're not going to give you straight answers, and it's not even their own fault. They don't know what to give you.
Yeah,
right?
And I think that you mentioned Henry Ford. I'll quote Albert Einstein: is that the model that you have determines what you're going to find out.
Right.
And if your model is, I have an idea, I want to see how to refine that idea, it's a totally different mindset than, the reason you have that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that says it's not about you. If you're going with the mindset of like, how do I fix my thing?
Right.
If you do it enough times with enough people doing it, some will hit some really great stuff and it'll be great for them. But in the general case, you're going to get what you want, which is not, it's going to be about you. It's not going to be about them. And it doesn't matter how well you think you solve someone's problem. They get money out of their pocket because it solves their problem from their perspective, not your problem, or not even their problem from your perspective.
Right.
And it sets up this perspective of like, how do I get from my thing to what will sell better, as opposed to, at the most superficial level, it's like, what problem of theirs can I solve? But even more is like, where are these people? Like, what's wrong with these people? What do they want to spend money on? What problems do they have that if I solve that problem, they'll be like, that's worth more than the money I have.
Right. Well, it's much more powerful to build up an audience in some certain area of a market that you're interested in, and then survey them with the potential. Again, people vote with their wallets. There's different types of validation. There's soft validation, there's medium validation, and there's hard validation, right? Something like a hard validation is pre-sale. Hey, Josh, I've got this really cool thing. I want you to check this out. This landing page that I built out. It costs $1,000. Do you want it? And you go there. If you don't buy it, you didn't want it, right? A softer or medium validation would be sending surveys out and actually going through and trying to figure out exactly what do you have a problem with this? Yes, great. Here's a survey. Let me know how you would want this solved. That's a medium type of validation because it still has a barrier to entry.
They wouldn't have done it if they didn't have some expectation that this might lead to their lives being improved.
The only way on God's green earth you're going to get somebody to fill out a survey is if they really have a problem, right? And then
it could be a friend. People do it out of like guilt or something. Like, I mean, when I was in school, in business school, like I was constantly I'm doing this course and I got to get this survey out, and I'm like, okay, I'll do your survey because I know you're going to do mine later.
Right.
There's no honesty in it. It's just
right.
Like, there's some honesty in it.
That's a trade, right? That's just trading. So, and the other problem, going back to customer development, is that we start with the misconception that we have the solution in mind. So it becomes very difficult to not lead your prospect. You're like, well, if you had something that did this, would you like it? And that's not going to the deep root of the problem. You really need to start with the problem first. If people are not complaining about it, then it's probably, if they're not complaining about it online, it's probably not that big of a problem because people.
Well, I know you do a lot of stuff that's online. So there can be people who don't go online who have problems too. So there's like, you can go to meetups, or you can, there's places that you can find
100%
people with problems that would never make it online.
True, 100%, absolutely.
I guess if you're looking for online solutions, then you're going to tend to want to look there for them.
But Josh, I would even argue that at this point, like, I would argue two things. I would say that first, that's true. But even if you're dealing with a brick and mortar business, people are going to bitch about the industry online in forums. Those forums might look like old GeoCities forums or something from MySpace, but they're still bitching online. And two, if your audience is not online for some reason, if there's a market that isn't online, then you're probably going to have problems taking credit card payments, or you're going to have maybe you probably run into a scalability issue, right? How do you if your audience isn't online, they're probably not, North American or European.
I guess one of my examples of like a very successful business that came out of picking up the scraps of another big business was Walmart. So maybe not my favorite company. I don't know if I've ever shopped there, but I've shopped there. But I don't know if you know, Sears dominated the market of retail back in the day, and they were dominating the big cities. And this is my understanding. I haven't like studied it in detail. And my understanding was that Sam Walton was like, well, they got the cities, and he was kind of stuck with the dregs, which was smaller markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was anyone's plan, but it turned out that if you make a store that can serve an entire community, then another big store like that won't be able to fit. And so I think I don't know if it's changed, but I think their main profits come from cities that are the size that one Walmart can support, but a Target or a Kmart can't get into. And so they put, a Walmart comes in, puts out of business all the small grocery stores and all the hardware stores and things like that. Now it's the one place to go. And now in order to get the market, you would sell at a discount.
Mm-hmm.
Now that if you want a hammer, you go to Walmart or got to drive 50 miles to the next town and back. So you can charge what a hammer is worth plus the value of someone's time to go all the way to another town and back. And if the other town also has a Walmart, then you're really stuck and you can charge a lot more. And I think all the profits come from there. And I don't think they make a lot of money from a town where there's a Walmart and a Kmart.
Mm.
So that's a business model that is like totally unrelated to offering solutions online, but it's very successful. I mean, I think like how many of the top 10 richest Americans are Walmart heirs? I think like 5 or something. I don't know.
Probably. But I'm pretty sure Walmart has a website too. And I'm pretty sure there are people bitching about Walmart online.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, there was a solution that, anyway, that's not, you and I aren't doing that kind of business. I'm not sure. Maybe people who are watching.
I don't completely know the ins and outs of that type of business anyway, so I can't speak specifically to that. But yeah, I mean,
you're open to, there could be things that we're not thinking of.
Of course,
the solution is still amenable to.
Of course. Well, I think that's the point is that if you go back pre-internet, 1800s, I mean, the whole idea. You look at Levi Strauss, right? He was selling jeans to miners, right? He invented it. Like he was like, oh, you're gonna go dig for gold, where you're gonna need some actually really durable pants for that. So let me make you some. There was I can't remember his name. There was another guy who really made a fortune off the gold rush by selling the pickaxes. Right? That's where now we say, don't dig for gold, sell shovels. Right? Don't be the gold miner, sell the shovels to the gold miner. That's where the money is. People are always going to chase gold.
So a while ago you said, when I asked you what's different, how did you do it instead? You like quickly said where the passion came out, and you said in a short amount of time how to do it better, another way of doing it. And maybe not better for, it's not necessarily better for some people, but I think lean, when I look at lean, I think they're very successful, and it's very useful for a certain audience, but it doesn't serve everyone. And I think that the people it doesn't serve is like much bigger, like the hole that they don't fit is much bigger than the market that they do fit. Because I think it's like most people want to be more entrepreneurial. It
depends. I like de-risking things, right? If you do front load, so the challenge with this new methodology, the idea of actually building the audience and finding out what that specific audience wants in regards to a specific problem. The challenge with that is that you're actually front loading all the work. Instead of, while other people that are going to be launching apps and building apps, you're going to be doing research and sticking in Google Docs and finding out what the nouns and verbs people use to describe their problems. They're not sexy. It's not a sexy process. But what you're actually doing is you're de-risking yourself. If you build something and then launch it and it fails, you've wasted a tremendous amount of time and money. And I think when you're in your 20s, that you're cool with that. I've done that. I mean, whatever. With that said, the way to do long-term success is to actually go after that audience, find the problem that a specific audience in a specific market has, make sure that all the signs are there that that this is a large problem. Are competitors in the market? Are they funneling ads to this problem? Are there keyword searches done on this problem? Do people actually look for solutions to this problem? What type of words do people use to describe the problem? All this body of research to see if there's an actual market there, and then start building an audience by talking about that problem, funneling people in from all these places over the internet to one place, then slowly seeing if there's a solution that these groups of people want. By doing that, it takes longer, and it takes it's much more research intensive. But what you're actually doing is you're de-risking yourself. It becomes much harder to fail because you're not going to spend $1 or a nickel or a dime on anything without having something pre-sold and proof of concept. I will never, ever, ever, from this point forward and for the rest of the time that I'm alive, I will never, ever spend money on anything without having the audience pay for it first, because I have done it now a few times. It is way more profitable. It is better for your health. It is a much stronger process. If people are not willing to pay for the bill, they're not going to be buying it once it's live.
And you describe it as de-risking.
It's 100%.
Yes, I agree it's de-risking, because once you have that community there and you're part of the community and they see you as a problem solver and someone who listens, there's nothing more valuable. Well, I don't know. There's not a lot of, a supremely valuable thing is for someone who's valuable. Maybe they have maybe they're, you know, the CEO or founder of a company, or maybe they're someone with money, or maybe lots of connections. For them to see you as someone that they can share their problems with, it's like, you know, when someone who has resources shares a problem with you, they're basically telling you, I will pay you.
Yes.
If you solve my problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you know, it's like, I'm a pot of gold. And if you don't create, if you're constantly pitching them, they put up to protections and they don't tell you the problems.
Yeah.
But you want them telling you problems. So it might not be sexy at the beginning. And, oh, and here's what so because I get so many clients who come to me and students in when I teach in school, that their view is like work has to be work. But when you're doing something in a field that you care about, yes, it may be more work and maybe it isn't as sexy, but it's fun. It's fun, and you're doing it with people that you like, and you're creating relationships with them where they look at you as someone they want you in their life.
It's a big difference. It is incredibly gratifying and rewarding to receive emails from people who say, oh my God, thank you so much for this. You've changed my life. And that only happens, that only time personally that I've ever seen that happen, whether it's with our own companies or within companies that we've helped to build. The only time I've ever seen that happen is when you start with their problem. When you
or even if they say, even if they don't, before they can say, I'm so glad you solved this, I can't wait for you to finish your solution.
100%. 100%. Case in point. So I know that you're in leadership and that you teach people how to really, you know, bring themselves and their personal lives up to another level. And I think if someone out there wanted to say, and I'm just going to use leadership as an example, they could tomorrow build a leadership app. You know what? Leadership is a problem. A lot of people want to become leaders. They don't know how. I'm going to launch an app that's going to do that for them. That is a disaster waiting to happen. The smarter way to do it. Now compare that. You know what? I shouldn't even say that. Let's take that as an example A. Example B, somebody else comes on and says, you know what, leadership is a problem. I really think independence and bringing people to the forefront and showing people how to lead others is a valuable skill. I know it's a valuable skill, but I'm going to test it first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a meetup, and I'm going to start a meetup and see if anybody shows up to that meetup, because that's a little bit of validation. Are you willing to actually hop on a train, if you're in New York City, go somewhere, go to a meetup, and actually sit down and listen to me talk about leadership? Okay, great. That happened. I validated it. Next thing, now that I've had people come to those events and I've talked about it, and I kind of now understand what was success, what the best meetups were. Oh, 800 people came to that meetup, but 200 people or 20 people came to this meetup. Oh, so maybe that topic is much more valuable, at least to people that I'm speaking to. They want to know more about that. Then I launch just an email, say, hey guys, I'm actually gonna do one-on-one consulting. It's actually gonna be a series of, I don't know, 6 webinars over the course of 2 months. It's going to cost $997. It's going to focus on A, B, and C. Here's what you're going to learn. If you're interested, fill this out. This is a pre-sale, right? If people purchase that, you now have validation because they have paid with money. Specifically, not only have they paid money, so you know that they are interested in what you're talking about, but because you've actually talked directly to the audience and you have a little bit of data without building anything, you now know the topics to cover, and then you can pepper that audience. You
didn't have to know about it before.
Yeah.
You could have been a total neophyte just picking up the business unmet need out there.
100%. And then all you do is take it a step further. Hey guys, thank you. 3 people sign up, right? So we're not even talking about a lot of people. 3 people sign up. You've made $3,000 before you've made anything. You've pre-sold something. You have validated that idea. You say, okay, great. I've made a little bit of money. Now let me figure out how I'm going to do this thing. Hey guys, hey Joe, Mary, and Sue, thank you so much for signing up to this course, teaching leadership. The first lesson is going to be an introduction to the overview of leadership history. I don't even know, something that would tie to it. Fine. What is exactly that you would like to learn about that specific topic? Email me back, because I want to make sure that I cover all of this stuff and answer all of your questions. They are going to give you the problems they have. I really want to learn about X. And all you have to do is answer that. If you answer those questions, you have successfully provided value. And then you don't have to guess. If you have to guess about anything in any product you're building, you're making a mistake. There is no guesswork, because if you don't know, if you find yourself saying, well, I think that they're going to want this, or what if, or I think. What if they want this? What if a user comes and clicks this button and they can't find that? I think they're going to really want. No, that's guessing. You don't do it.
Oh my God. I saw this, you know, there's a couple high schools that are talking to me about developing my courses for students. And there's this video showing off how great this program is at this one school. And in this video, this captures like everything. The teacher is saying to a student, and the student is like, I don't know, high school or grade school, I don't know, young student. And the teacher, a group of students, and the teacher says to them, if you had all the money in the world, if you had basically saying, if you had no constraints, what would you do?
That's such bullshit.
To start a company. I'm like, way to kill the student's way of like, the problem with like, the reason we have problems in the world is not that we don't have the money to create solutions.
Right. I see the question, the correct question should be, you have no money. How would you generate $1,000?
Or I would say,
how would you get your first customer? That's it. If you can just answer that, how do you find that first customer, or how do you generate your first $1,000? Because once you do that, once you have someone who goes through the process and does a step-by-step thing where they're like, oh, look, I got somebody that's actually interested in this. I actually found a problem that somebody has, and they said that they would be willing to pay X amount of dollars because it would save them 2X that much or make them 3X that much. That is worth taking my time to sketch out a couple of wireframes and then say, hey, would you pay for that? If so, buy here, and I will make it for you.
All right, and now I want to point out that when my students go through this process, okay, a lot of people watching this are going to be thinking to themselves, well, what if I go do something I don't really like it? Like, okay, so I found some need, and I realized that a lot of people want to find, you know, I don't know, I'm not going to make up problems for them, but I find that there's some problem X in the world. And they think to themselves, all right, well, I can work on it. And after a while, they're like, but they realize that they don't like working on that problem, or they don't like the people in that community. What I find is that once you learn how to do this once, the next time you do it is really a lot faster.
100%.
So if you develop the skills of like identifying a person or community that has a problem and getting them to open up with you and share with these things and start going through this process that you're talking about, even if the first one, you go for a little bit and you're like, you know, I don't really like this, or it's not going anywhere, or I thought there was a bigger market than there was, and it turns out it's not working out as I hoped. Once you know how to do it, it's infectious. And you want it, not infectious, but it's like, you want to do it again.
Liberating. It's 100% liberating. And the difference is too, you realize that the steps are exactly the same. This is why one of the big revelations that I had, words there. A couple years ago, I was looking at direct marketers, and I was just doing research for something, and it was over a course of several months. And I just kept falling into these rabbit holes and rabbit holes and rabbit holes, and just like I got really curious because, you know, I think at one time or another, I think everyone's come across these websites that look like terribly shady sites that have bright yellow buy here buttons with little red green circles around it, and it's just like 15 pages of text. It's just like this never ending. And I was like, it looks scammy as hell. And I started realizing that a lot of the people that I were currently admiring had built their entire businesses based on those same concepts of direct marketing and internet marketing, but had actually gotten rid of all the scammy crap and were actually just producing and selling real products that were really helping people in a much more modern way. And once I realized that, I started going back and seeing what these original people had done, even the ones that, especially the ones that weren't scammy, but kind of that second generation, the ones that came from the Dan Kennedy school and these classic legends of marketing had taken it to the next level. These younger guys, you look at them, and I was noticing that these guys had like 12 businesses. They were making 7 and 8 figures, and they have a dozen businesses, and none of them are in the same niche. We're talking, they would have one business in dating, and they would have one business in health and lifestyle and weight loss, and then they would be selling something that would be like a make money online thing. And I didn't even care about the products. Personally, for me, it was like, look at this. What these guys are doing is the holy grail of every startup that I currently work with. All these young 20-somethings and 30-somethings, when they want to build a product, you realize that the product is the business, not the actual app. These are people who are able, how is it possible that they can go out and make multiple 7-figure businesses in multiple different niches that they have no personal, it's not like they used to weigh 500 pounds and now they're 180 and they sell healthcare products. Like they might care about fitness, but that doesn't necessarily, they don't have to be doctors to sell weight loss pills. So how are they able to go across multiple genres, multiple categories, and be profitable and successful and have customers that love them in every single thing? So when I started to look at that, you start seeing that there's a very simple, very straightforward process. The process that we've sort of touched on the tip of the iceberg today so far. Once you build an audience and you build an audience that knows you, likes you, and trusts you, you can take that audience and pretty much help them out and do other things. And once you know how to build an audience that trusts you, it's not difficult to build an audience in multiple things, right? Because you're being, as long as you're honest about it and you have a specific, unique perspective on it, and everybody does, we're all unique people. We all have something to say. So as long as you put out your perspective to that audience in a way that resonates with them, which you do through your research, building an audience is not that tough. It just takes time. Yeah,
and so by this process, which is de-risked and fun, for people at home who might be thinking, but I don't know which one to go into, the best thing to do, my advice to my students and clients is pick one and go with it now. It might not be the one you go with in the long term, but the best way to find ones that you go with in the long term, or series that you go with in the long term, is to start with something now. So these people that you're saying back in the beginning, they had this stuff that looked shady. Okay, that was their best way to do it at the time.
100%.
And now they do it better. And if you want to do it well, you might do it not that well at the beginning. Everyone will have their own internal mechanisms to keep them from doing stuff that they really don't, you're not going to end up doing something you don't want to do.
Right.
And like more than half my students switch in the middle, and they start with something. And at the beginning, they're thinking a range of things. It could be something that their family thinks that they should go into this industry, or they think something's really hot, or their friends are going into it, or they think there's a lot of money in this area. And then partway through, they're like, I know why I did it. I thought that robotics was going to be really hot. But I don't really care that much about robotics. I really care much more about the environment.
Right.
And now they start doing something in the environment. Now when they start going to that community, they're not doing it because, they might the first time they're doing it because, Todd told me to. But the second time they do it, they're like, now that I did that first one that Todd got me to do, now I'm doing it for my passion. And I can't, then they're full of passion. They love what they're doing. And they go through those initial steps of forming the community instead of going ad hoc, or, instead of doing it just like pro forma, they do it out of something deep inside. And some people might be I think some people might have listened to what you said and said, yeah, well, that's if you want to sell diet pills or you want to sell ab rollers, but I want to change the world. Well, it turns out if you want to change the world, you got to know people. And it's the same, this way of getting there, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about about the problems and making the world better. This is also, I think, the most effective way of getting to those big problems that you want to solve as well.
If you know an audience, if you get to know an audience and they get to know you, it really does become much more difficult to fail. Even because you can launch. So I'll phrase it like this. So when most people start startups nowadays, and they build their MVP, which is your minimum viable concept product, essentially what they do is they build one thing. You're building one. I have an idea. There's a problem. I have an idea. Here's the solution. And they put the solution out there, and they put all their time and energy into the solution. And even a small MVP, I try to teach people that you shouldn't spend that much time on it, like a week or two max. But most people spend 3 to 6 months because they want an app. They really want software. So fine, you build software. Maybe you spent 3 months on it. You put it out there. What you're doing is you're basically putting all your eggs into one basket. And if you look at it from a audience perspective, you can, if you take your yearly calendar and you're building your audience and you're growing your audience, you can slowly ask your audience what they want. You're doing surveys, just trying to get a feel for what's next or what they specifically want. You're not worried about everybody else. You're just busy building people, bringing people in, showing them, providing value, things like that. what ends up happening is that you can start launching almost like a grid of products. So maybe your first product is up here, and it goes 3 steps and then drops off. But then you have another product that goes 1 step and drops off. And then you have test another product and that goes 5 or 6 steps and it looks like it's continuing to grow. So you can put more marketing and start maybe doing advertising or pitching that as a more core product. And then you try another thing and it does like 3 or 4 steps through it and it falls off. Maybe it hits a revenue cap, or maybe you tried to do a pre-sale and the pre-sale went well, but then when you launched it, nobody really bought it. So you only made a little bit of money or broke even from the pre-sale. The point is that you can start testing and doing all these little things over the course of time without having to lose money. Whereas if I just say, you know what, I'm going to build an app, it's going to cost me $20,000, it's going to take me 3 to 6 months to build. I put it out there. Oh, no one wanted it? Oh, well, yeah, we had to pivot. We were doing something else now. Well, that's 20 grand down the tubes, if not way more. And if you're a developer, then you just spent, what, 6 months of your time? Like, forget it. Like, that's still money. That's still your time that you could have been doing anything else with. Whereas if you build the audience and the audience doesn't like the product, I don't build it. I don't worry about it. If I say, hey guys, I'm doing a pre-sale, it's 1 week only. I'm just seeing if you guys are interested. You know, whatever. If nobody buys it, I just chuck it and move on. Or I start thinking about other ways I could pitch it, or maybe a different market, maybe a different percentage of the audience that would like it. But I don't waste time with it. It makes it much more easy to not worry about this big, gigantic failure because you're focusing on something very, very tiny, and you're focusing on just trying to solve a problem. If you don't solve the problem the right way, you move on. So yeah, you know, it makes you able to launch 100 ideas, 100 possible products in the same time frame that you're trying to build like some weak startup that you don't even have a market for, and you're just going to worry about building an audience after the whole thing launches.
I think of it as like it makes you someone who can solve, instead of someone who solves a problem, you're someone who can solve problems.
Right.
And man, I'm going to tell you, someone that you want in your life is you're sitting there and you have a problem. This person arrives, and when they leave, you don't have the problem anymore.
Right.
Like, you want people like that in your life. You just like people around that solve problems for you.
Yeah.
You know, I got to tell you about, I haven't told you this yet. So Todd and I, we met through mutual friends, and we started talking about stuff that we were working on. I told him how I wanted to build an online product. You know, I wanted to put my courses online, and I ended up hiring Todd and his team, his wife, to build my product. And before that, I've been working on it for a long time. And one of the things that I was talking to people about what I was doing, and one of them ran a program at NYU, and he points at me, I'm going to hire you. That was August, and in September I was in the classroom. So I was getting paid to work on my stuff, and a lot of what I developed. Oh, we didn't talk about this. Here's an offline thing where you can get a lot of ideas from and build a community. Is I would go to education conferences.
Yes.
And people are there, and they're all they have. You look at conferences have like breakout sessions. Which are the ones with a lot of people in them? Which are the ones that people talk about afterward? So I'd go to these conferences and I'd talk to people about what I was doing, and they would give me all these ideas. And I developed syllabi, whatever. And before you and I ever met, I taught my class, and it was a small class. It was an evening class, and so 6 students wrote reviews. Every single review was best class ever took, best professor I've had at the school, best. Like not 6 out of 10, 6 out of 6. All of them were like, this is great. So I had a pretty good sense there was something that like people liked there. But that was after a long time in developing. So here's what I haven't told you yet, is that I was meeting with this nonprofit that works in the K-12 space, so not my space. And we're having a conversation like this about how to educate, how to teach differently. You and I are talking about how to do entrepreneurship different than the mainstream. He and I were talking about different pedagogy for how to teach. And I'm telling him about what you and I created, the software. And so we meet once, and he says, can we get together again? I'd really like to see your software. And it's designed so that you can't see, the only way you can see the whole thing is by doing the whole thing, unless you're me and you have the password and you can go back. So I sit there and I show him all of it. And at one point he just sits there and he's like, we have a team of developers and product development people, and we've been working on this, and like, that's what we're building. And so they're like they haven't been around that long, and they're already up to 30,000 students using their stuff. I'm thinking to myself, it's a market that I'm not going into. To go for me to have 30,000 users out there, it's like, I'm thinking this could work really well for everyone.
Yeah.
I think it's a great product, so the students are gonna love it. His organization is gonna love it. And I pointed out to him, I had this recent experience where I got some testimonials from I hired a videographer to do some professional quality testimonials. I got a camera, right? I got lights, I can do my own testimonials. But when if I do them by myself, I have to think about f-stops and lighting and microphones. If I hire someone who's good at it, who's a professional, I can think about my customers, my goals. I don't have to think about that low-level stuff. So of course I say to this guy, if you work with me, you can think about strategy. You can think about your students, your people. And I know how to do this part. And he was like, I like that. And I think that's what you were saying. When you become an expert in your field because you know the people, you know their problems, opportunities pop up. I didn't talk to the guy who hired me at NYU because I wanted a job at NYU. Now I'm getting paid to develop what I'm doing.
Right.
I didn't intend at this nonprofit, I didn't intend to pick up 30,000 users, but I've solved a problem by seeing people with a problem. It was my problem originally. I didn't know leadership. I didn't know how to teach this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I realized a lot of people have this problem. A lot of people were like complaining about, I got hired at this place and someone got hired because someone got promoted over me. What do they have that I don't have? I'm like, it's obvious if you know, but you don't know. Mm-hmm. And like, that's not a small number of people. There's a lot of people who are like very analytical, very poor at relating to, social skills.
Right.
And everything that's out there doesn't teach it very well. So I'm like, that's after many things that kind of led me up to realizing start with the problem, start with the people.
Right.
Then I realized this is a community that I really like working with. It's a product that it's a set of products that I really like developing. And now people see me and like, they meet me and they're like, I got to put you in touch with this person who runs this.
Yeah, doors open doors, but look what you did, right? Like you actually did exactly what we're talking about. You found an audience. That audience has a problem, which in this case was leadership. You experimented. You didn't just launch something. You started teaching. You started teaching them, and you found out the way in which they specifically wanted to be taught. How did they want this problem solved for them in this specific way? And then based on that information, you created a course that solved the problem in the way that you already knew they liked being talked to. In a way that you already knew that they wanted, yes, Josh, this is how I want you to solve this problem for me. This is how I respond to this problem. That way you presented that solution is exactly how I want to be pitched to or how I want my problem solved. And then based on that, then you kind of expand that further into an educational system. And because you've already been paid for this over the course of time, you didn't just launch this thing. This has been thoroughly researched, both in the course material and both in the audience of how you're presenting this to them. It's a very specific thing done through trial and error. You know what the results of your course are because you've done the course and people have paid you for that. So now all you're worried about is just expanding your reach and scaling, which is the business part.
Yeah, and so and on my part, so of course, when you love what you do, like I love what I do, you're talking about it to everyone all the time.
Yeah.
So you and I meet and I'm talking about all the stuff and like, you're like, and I'm like, I've got all this stuff. I can't wait to make the online version of it. And you're like, I happen to be good at that. And I'm like, yes, I'll pay you to develop this stuff. And that's how, I don't know how many people out there have like working relationships with people that they like friends with the people you work with because I'm an expert in something, but I do have a problem that I know how to do. And you're an expert in that particular solution. Right. And all you did was listen to me and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, but you basically said, here's what I can do. And I was like, that's what I need done. You're probably just telling me what I needed done.
Well, not even that. I mean, because it becomes a no-brainer because you actually built up a product and a system for developing products in an appropriate way. And so therefore it becomes a no-brainer for you because you know that you can make that money back. It's not a dump. It's not like, oh, it's going to cost me this much money. How am I ever, like you're already going through that process. You had already turned it in your own mind to see it as an investment because you're like, wow, if I build this out, I have already taught this many students. I've already brought in this much money to prove my idea. If I had a way to reach that many students plus just a little more, I'm already doubling with the cost of what it would take to build this thing. So you instantly, subconsciously already had that as an investment in your head. And it doesn't, and from my perspective, you know, when as a business owner and someone that helps people build this kind of thing, I can objectively and honestly look at your audience, look at what you're building, you know, look at how often you're publishing and how you've been building your audience. And I can say with almost certainty, you know, I can't guarantee these kind of things because no one can, but I can almost be certain that you can make that type of, the money that you took to build that can be made back within 1 or 2 launches. It is, you are not just dumping money. You have done the pre-sale. You already did the pre-sale. You had audience who was willing to pay for whatever it was that you were teaching. And so now you're building something to do that better. You're streamlining your own process. But people, you already know people are going to pay for it. You know, now it's just a question of how many people are going to pay for it. And it's going to be more than can sit in a classroom.
Oh yeah, that's the whole idea. And the money to pay you wasn't, that came from developing it. I mean, that came from my paycheck. Right. From teaching already. So I don't know if it was based on a pre-sale. I don't know how well, yeah, exactly. I don't know how well it'll work out for everybody else in my case, but I think that tends to happen. You present yourself as someone who knows the problem, who wants to solve it, and has empathized with the people feeling the problem, and is compassionate with the people with the problem. People are like, good, help us solve the problem. Right. In my case, it was NYU. And so when I started working with Todd, you know, Todd told me that he's got a lot of people who come to him who come with the old way. They're like, oh, we have this idea for this app. It's a challenge, man. Yeah, people come to you. I'm gonna correct me if I say it if I get any of this stuff off. But my understanding is that people come to you and they're like, hey, we got this idea for this app. Can you build it for us? Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, do you know who's going to buy it? Do you have a mailing list? Do you have, like, what's the behind the idea? Do you have anything? And they're like, that's what you're for. And you're like, well, I think what you've said to me is like, I don't even get that far. I mean, honestly, a lot of times you're right in that I ask them, it's my job as someone who builds this stuff. I mean, I have 2 obligations, right? One is to make sure that any job that we undertake, and if we're building an app, we need to make sure that we can build it for them, right? But the second thing is that if, you know, nobody, especially developers, nobody wants to build something that no one's going to use, right? Nothing sucks more than working on something 40, 50, 60 hours a week for 6 to 8 months and then launching it and no one show up. That sucks. It drains the life out of you. So I have an obligation to find out where people are, both for my sake and theirs, right? But what usually happens is when I dive in and we ask people these questions, it's similar, but what basically happens is that they say, no, we know our market. Here's our market. Here's these people. They see marketing, or they see their audience as secondary. You know, we know that marketing is important. We know that emails are important. We know that building an audience is important, but we think it's more important to do that after we have a product out there in the marketplace for people to check out. And that's incorrect. And it's a big fight. Not a verbal fight or anything like that. I mean, you know, look, ultimately, I run a business too. It's my moral obligation to tell you that I think that's incorrect, and to do exactly what we're doing here, to tell you all the reasons why you're going to run into problems, and say, okay, well, if you decide to do that, you know, you're going to have to be sure about this, make some money for marketing, you're going to be spending more, all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's up to the founders. What ends up happening is it really, especially within the last year, a lot of what I've been doing with startups and founders, and these are not stupid people. These are people that come from top schools and are either coming out of top accelerators or going into top accelerators. Yeah, it's not a matter of intelligence. It's a matter of compassion and empathy. They're passionate about product building because we're all makers, and we all have this dream of people like using our app, or, you know, we have that. It's that artist dream. It goes back to the artist dream. We all want to make the painting. Yeah. We all want to make the painting. We don't want to sit there and build the customer base who could possibly buy the painting first, right? No, I want to make the painting, and then I can show people that I have a painting, and maybe they'll buy the painting. And you're like, no. That's not how professionals do it.
That's literally
making
not how
yourself
professionals do it.
I always think of that as like, it's making yourself into a commodity. Like it's just saying like, I'm a shinier can of corn. That's what I look at.
Yeah.
And I want to, so Todd talks about like, but then with me, you were like, well, you know, you're going to need audio for this. You're going to need all this content. I'm like, yeah, I got that.
Yeah, that was 90% of it. I was like, are you kidding me? That you're like the 1%, dude.
I'm like, all I need is this. And because I already had written up the description of all the different text. I mean, I had to modify it to, you know, improve it. And I had all the audio, I had all the curriculum, I had everything set up. I just needed the part that I didn't have.
Right.
And then when you work with someone, it's like a real joy to work with the person, because you end up once you've worked with people and you know what their problem is and you solve it as far as you can each time, you know, at the beginning of your first meetup or your first time getting people together, you're gonna be up there in front of people and maybe you'll say some things that don't, like, you're just learning. Yeah, that is gonna happen. But by the second or third time you've done this, you've created something to get the people based on what they're saying. You know, you've said to them, in my case, it's like I've gotten people in the room and said, look, this is something that I don't see happening. What if we did stuff like this? And like some people are like, yeah, let's do it. And then you get it going and it turns out that they said that, but they weren't that into it. Right, a couple of those things are going to happen.
Yeah, and I think you could look at it this way. Again, it's a lot of it is common sense. You know, it's not rocket science. It's just that, you know, you're basically telling people that they have to build a factory before they can eat the candy. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, which just from a rational perspective, which sounds better? Which sounds like a more likely to succeed? Joshua Spodek. Okay. Josh decides to launch a mini course. He's launching a mini course next week. It's going to be free. It's really just lead generation. But he wants to put some stuff together that he thinks people are like. So which is smarter? You just make a mini course and put it out there. Or you go to your blog, which you've been posting daily for several years. You see which page views are. You see which the top 10 articles that have generated you the most traffic, and you bundle those up and you string them together as a course. Which is more likely to succeed? Which is de-risking you the most, right? Well, obviously, it doesn't take a genius to be able to say, well, you know, these 10 articles together have gotten 10,000 page views and the most comments of any articles that I've ever done. If I wrap those up and launch that as a free course, a mini course, right? There's such a more highly likelihood of that generating leads and people liking it, because you already know people like it. They've already commented. They've shown you that they've liked it by clicking on it, by reading on it, and by commenting. Rather than if I just made something up and tossed it out there, and you know, maybe some people like it, maybe some people don't. I don't know, right? It's very obvious.
My whole entrepreneurship course emerged from, it was like the schools all want me to teach it. That's what gets more students in the leadership class. And at the beginning, I was like, you know, I have experience as an entrepreneur. I'll teach the course, but it's not really what I want. And then the more I teach it, the more I'm like, this is really deep. This is like the difference between having control in your life or not. This is being able to take responsibility for what you, and so I'm like, this is really important stuff. And it wasn't me, like I was resisting that.
Yeah.
But I can't fight the market. The market knows more than I do. It's really important to people.
It is. And that's why the level of deepness you go is based on what the people in your market and people in your audience want. Like, is it really at this point, and being honest, so I know like some of the exercises you have, especially those early ones, is it a big shock to you? Are you surprised when people say that they really love those exercises? Or are you just like, yeah, I know it's good, and you're used to it now because you've tested it, and that's why you presented it, is because people liked it in the first place?
Oh yeah, it's like actually, I got to tell you, every time that someone shares with me their comments about an exercise, sometimes it's like that worked for me or that didn't work for me. It's just, I'm just using that as input to refine the exercise, to make it better. I'm always like updating how I write it, because every time someone has a problem that I haven't set, if someone has a problem with one, then that's something I can improve about it to make it better for the next people. Yep. So they don't hit that problem. So I'm always refining and refining and refining. So how I feel about it is it's not that I'm evaluating how I feel. It's more like I'm enthusiastic about it. Like,
Right.
oh, that's more data.
Yeah, it's refinement. It's refinement. If somebody, this is why you ask questions. This is when we talked earlier. If I was to launch a webinar course and just to do a pre-sale, I'm going to ask you exactly what you want to learn, and I'm going to make that webinar or that lesson the answers to what you wanted to learn. And then after that lesson, I'm going to take Q&A, and I'm going to make sure I answer every question. And then after that is over, I'm going to send you another survey saying, hey, just want to make sure no one else had any questions. That was a lot of fun. Module 2 is going to be this. Do you have any questions about that? Because my job is to problem solve. So I am solving your problem. What are your problems? What are the questions you have? I'm going to solve that. And then there are certain things that you might not have questions about, or you might not even know about, that I'm going to put throughout there to kind of build the structure and kind of finish off that course or that software or whatever it is. But your answers or your questions are absolutely priority, and they get answered. So that way, guess what? It becomes something that you like. That is how great software is made, when it just instantly solves that problem intrinsically. It's not that they just magically got it. It's that they did tremendous amounts of research and they know their audience.
I'll go past like, it's something that you love. I mean, this is like, people look at business as something like, a lot of people look at it as a place where you're supposed to be cold and rational and not emotional. But man, the people that why are we doing this right now? We're not, who knows what's going to come of this? I mean, we have these conversations that I couldn't capture in an ink piece, but is there any doubt watching us that like we love what we're doing right now? And the people that we interact with, we love working with them. And it's like, it's fantastic. It's okay. So we're 90 minutes in right now.
Sure.
And I have a feeling that they're coming to get us. I presume you can hear that. Okay, we've lost most of people, but the people who are watching still are like, this is great stuff.
I think we've been damn engaging.
I hope so. I mean, I hope people are like, all right, give us some detail. So maybe let's set that up for the next time. Maybe you can walk through some examples. If you can say the process that you went through, because I know you've done a couple of recent launches, and I know that every time you do a launch, you're like, I know how to do even better the next time.
Yeah.
And we've been a bit general.
Can people? I have a question. I'll even cut you off. I have a question for you. Is there a way? Does Inc. provide you with like a specific Inc. email address, or is there a way for people to contact you?
Well, they can just email me directly, josh@spodek.net. So
josh@spodek.net. So what I would say is, I would ask everybody, if you have questions, if you have things that you would like us to cover.
This is so automatic for time. This is so, yeah.
Email Josh, and we will answer them in the next thing. Right?
Yeah. So why would we talk about? We can talk about what we want to talk about, but that's putting us first.
Sure.
We want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Absolutely. And maybe if people want it, look, if people like it, we can always do this live and actually take real questions, right? Like live questions. So, I think it's about helping people. So this is a great starting point. If people are interested, this is our MVP. We didn't spend any money, and it's based off of audience research. All right. And we'll see.
And it's fun and it's enjoyable. And if it doesn't work, no big deal. If it does work, we're on a lead to help you.
Absolutely.
You, the people watching.
100%.
All right, so let's stop for now, and then we'll come back on it at some future time, and hopefully answering your questions.
Perfect. Absolutely. Right, Josh, it was great talking to you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
Same here.